There he is, Charles Gary, street fighter in the courtroom who has just returned from Guyana. The Reverend Jim Jones in the People's Temple? Right, but he's your client. Right. All right. Given that perspective that he's your client, I still want to know what you saw when you were down in Guyana. I got to be blunt. I don't even know where Guyana is. I mean, I know roughly where it is.
It's on the northeastern part of South America. It's adjoining Venezuela. And there you find paradise.
Well, why would you have to go that far to find paradise? For that matter, why did Reverend Jim Jones go that far to find paradise?
I don't know why he did that, but I'm telling you, that is paradise. I have never seen anything so beautiful in my life.
Good evening. The bodies of as many as 400 persons, all of them believed American members of a fanatic religious cult, were found today in a remote jungle compound in Guyana. Most of the dead apparently committed suicide by poison, but possibly a fourth of them were murdered. The bodies were discovered by Guyanan troops after some members of the religious cult, the People's Temple, Saturday night attacked a nearby airstrip and killed 5 persons, among them Congressman Leo Ryan of California and 3 American newsmen. They were there investigating the cult run by American Jim Jones. Jones' body, as well as those of his wife and small son, were reported among the dead found at the village, Jonestown.
It's been a horrible experience. When you see several hundred people that you've got to know and loved and cared for, and see the beautiful program that they had going, and to see it destroyed within a matter of minutes, in a senseless, irresponsible, hysterical sense, it just doesn't make any sense.
Charles's wife, Louise, was a member of the People's Temple and a very active member. And when what became known as defectors began getting articles published in the newspapers and magazines that were contrary to what the public image of the temple was, Louise asked Charles if he would represent the temple, and he said yes, after having gone to a service there, which was like a revival meeting. People performing on the stage, and there would be speakers, and singing and dancing, and a wonderful meal afterward, and just this great feeling of community, which Charles had felt as the lawyer for the Black Panther Party. They also had a church, and the kinds of services they had were very similar to what he was experiencing at the People's Temple. So he agreed to represent them. He went to the jungle twice, and all he saw in the jungle was happiness. He spoke with people. He'd stayed there 2 or 3 or 4 days each time, and there was never an indication that there was anything wrong.
James Warren Jones, better known as the Reverend Jim Jones. To some, he was a powerful spiritual leader, a good man. At various times, he said he was the reincarnation of Christ and Lenin. His 19-year-old son, Stephen, now sees him this way.
I can almost say that I hate this man for doing what he's done, because he has destroyed everything I've lived for.
I saw my father work a lot of people on the left side of the spectrum. He found out what they wanted to hear, and he told it to them, and they were on board. And frankly, it was harmful to a lot of people.
How much have you been paid by the People's Temple?
Right, and you try to stop it.
How long did you look into the People's Temple before you decided to take the case?
Right, and you try to at least guide some of the children out of there.
Charles Gary, where do you go from here?
He felt that the People's Temple was the answer to an integrated society that lived together, worked together, and prospered together. And something that he'd never seen before, where children were honored and taken care of and educated, and seniors were taken care of health-wise, and given good meals, and had a nice place to stay and live, like socialized medicine, but socialized society.
What people saw when they came to Jonestown is not what people lived in Jonestown. you know, when they knew someone from the outside was coming, including Charles, things were cleaned up quite a bit. And still, Charles was able to see that something's not right here.
Around October of 1978, I began getting phone calls that were patched through from the jungle of crazy things that they were being attacked by various people coming in planes, and I would listen to Jim Jones raving on the radio, and people from the organization would come and throw stones at my window and wake me up in the middle of the night and keep me up all night. And I talked to Charles about it, and I said, something weird is going on with these people, and I can't quite put my hand on it, but it's very strange.
Good evening. Congressman Leo Ryan of California is dead, shot along with 4 other Americans, including 2 newsmen from NBC. They were gunned down at an airstrip near the remote outpost of Jonestown in Guyana. Ryan had gone there to investigate a camp operated by members of an obscure American religious sect called the People's Temple. After escaping a knife attempt on his life, Ryan and his party were trying to leave last night when the attack occurred. 10 people were wounded in the shooting.
Everyone was assembled in the pavilion after the congressman left. And Jim told Charles that he was no longer welcome in the community. He told him he was no longer welcome because the people had turned against him, because he was responsible for having the congressman come there. Which wasn't true. Charles was not responsible for that. And I don't know whether the people had turned against him or not, but that's what he was told. Charles asked Jim, well, if I'm not safe here or I'm not wanted here, where do you want me to go? And he was escorted to a hut away from the pavilion and told to stay in the hut and not to come out, and that if he did, he would be killed. He could hear sounds coming from the pavilion, people speaking over the loudspeaker, but couldn't make out the words that they were saying. After hearing voices for a long, long time, he heard what he thought was Jim Jones say, "Mother, mother, mother," and then there was silence.
Mother, please, please.
The bodies still lie where they fell, face down, the stench almost unbearable. Most seemed to accept death as if they were simply going to sleep. Some had pillows beneath their heads. Some died alone, separated by only a little space. Others held on to their families until the end. It's believed each lived about 5 minutes after swallowing a mixture of cyanide and a flavoring liquid. Soon these transport planes will be taking back the bodies of the United States citizens who left their homeland looking for a new life, but finding instead death.
What stood out most for me with Charles is how he showed up after it was all over. People who were staunch supporters of my father in the temple disappeared after everything went down. And what Charles did was to step up and say, hey, anything you need, you can count on me. And I was this kid coming back, had spent time in prison, accused of something I couldn't possibly have done. A lot of people were looking for scapegoats, and I certainly could have been one. Had I not had a lawyer with some integrity in Guyana, I would have been one.
Charles returned to San Francisco, and I can say for sure that he was never the same again. They did not believe that Charles didn't know about what was going to happen. And I believe that it eventually cost him his life. He was never the same man again. He developed Parkinson's disease. He had problems with his memory. He just got old very fast. I mean, Charles was an elderly man when he died, but he had gone from a vibrant man to a man that had trouble sleeping, cried often, was no longer upright in the way he stood, and just couldn't forget what had happened there.
I cannot forget. I cannot forget. I have not been able to sleep. I just can't handle it.